Welcome to the Rob Call Bottom Up Show, sponsored by opednews.com and available on Pacifica Radio, Progressive Radio Network, and iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud, and at opednews.com/podcasts. My guest for this show is Cynthia Mckinney. She's a former congresswoman and 2008 presidential candidate for the Green Party, and she's an assistant professor at North-South University in the departments, the School of Social Sciences and the School of Business and Economics. So great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rob. This has been a long time coming, and I really appreciate the fact that you were patient and tolerant with me, and that we are finally making this happen, and maybe we can make more happen in the future.
That would be great. And you've been on before, but it's been a long time. And yeah, it was difficult with it. What is it, a 12-hour time difference?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're at the North-South University in Bangladesh.
That's right. I was invited to come as a convocation speaker, and honestly, I just didn't leave. I found the people so warm and welcoming. The institution was created for all of the right reasons. It's the first private university in Bangladesh. The School of Business and Economics is U.S. accredited. They are now trying to get U.S. accreditation for the other schools. The language of instruction is English. So it makes it very easy for me to be here. And basically, the idea from the institution is that those professors who have trained in other parts of the world, the global north, come and basically begin the process of knowledge transfer, technology transfer to the global south. It's a wonderful idea, and I'm very happy to be here, and I've been so warmly welcomed. So anyway, let's see how long it lasts.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're really enjoying it and it's working for you. So I wanted to have you back on the show because we started this effort to get you on the show probably at least a month ago. But it was difficult because of the time difference. We're doing the show at 9:30 on Saturday night. The reason I wanted you on, because there was a big conversation about Representative Omar and her criticism of the Israel lobby and AIPAC. And when I think of AIPAC attempting to get members of Congress fired by primarying them, I think of you first. We met back, I don't know, probably around 2006, 2008 at a Take Back America conference when you were still a member of Congress, I think. When were you in Congress?
I was last in Congress, January 2007 is when I left.
All right, so I nailed it. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So, and how long were you in Congress?
12 years altogether.
12 years.
Yes, a long time. It gave me the opportunity to really get to know not only the system, so I wasn't there with the neophyte's eye. I was there for a while with the neophyte's eye, and I really didn't understand a lot because, a lot of it was jaded by, oh, wow, I'm here, the nation's capital. But then the reality sank in, and I have to say that it was, quite frankly, I think it was Bob Torricelli who helped things to sink in for me. We were in an international relations committee meeting, and he was the chair of the committee. My background is international relations from University of Southern California, from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. And there I was a PhD candidate at that time. I was a PhD candidate at the Fletcher School. So everything was about security studies, international affairs, diplomacy. And so it was a natural for me to be on that committee. So basically, what happened is that I get there, I'm in the committee, at the hearing, Torricelli is going after the witness. I mean, they're going after each other. Oh, they're going hard. And so I said, oh, wow, this is wonderful. You know, he's really attacking him. And then they walked out arm in arm. So it was just theater for the C-SPAN cameras. And that was my first experience in understanding that, you know, maybe everything that I see is not really what's actually going on. So I've got to dig a little deeper and understand this place a little better.
You know, it makes me think of back in November or the fall, Joe Biden campaigned for a Republican in Michigan who defeated their Democrat who was running. And maybe he let it slip a little bit too much. Maybe he went with this my friend on the other side of the aisle thinking too much, and it went so far that he actually sabotaged the Democrat. I mean, but that's that kind of thing you're talking about, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That what the reality is not what immediately meets the eye. So your idea of bottom up. So we've got a situation where we've got true believers at the bottom. I was a true believer at the bottom. And then I got elected. So I had an opportunity to still be a true believer, but not necessarily at the bottom, maybe in the middle. And there's this movie where the guy says, I got elected to the top only to find out that the top is the middle. So, you know, yeah, it's like that kind of a thing. So at the bottom, we're true believers. And the role of these individuals who are the actors on the stage is to make those people at the bottom remain true believers, to dance and jig and contort oneself in such a way as to make them.
We're good. Keep going.
Okay, as a way
to make them
believe, continue to believe, to believe that there's a difference at the top, but there's no difference at the top. Just like Torricelli taught me or showed me, was that in the end, they walk out arm in arm and they're best buds.
And a lot more people have in recent years been talking about the fact that it's not really two separate parties. It's the duopoly. It's the one party with different faces.
Yes, that's right. That's right. It's the duopoly.
So how did it change the way you operated and functioned and thought about politics once you had that epiphany?
Well, that's what caused me to dig deeper. And that's the beginning of my troubles. I got into trouble because I was not satisfied with just skimming the surface, that I wanted to get down to root causes and root understandings. And well, anyway, so I paid the price for trying to pursue those root understandings.
What are some examples of what you attempted to pursue?
Well, September 11th is one of those things. Before September 11th was the presidential election of 2000. And that was extremely problematic, because if you wanted to get to the truth, the bottom line of 2000 was that George W. Bush did not win. The election, the administration of the election, particularly in Florida, was not free and fair and square. It was not that. And that one of the computers, well, this is one of the little tidbits of information that very few people have, and that is that one of the computers was for election tabulation started out not at a zero tabulation, but at minus 16,000.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Minus 16,000.
Well, you know, for people who challenge the system, they don't always live. They get killed sometimes. I mean, so now you were telling me before we started recording that one of the reasons you're in Asia, in Bangladesh, is because you had a lot of problems with harassment.
Yes, it's true. I had stalkers. I had 2 stalkers, actually. And thank goodness, you know, because people would say, oh, you know, she's just lying. But I was able to get a jail sentence for one. You know, we were able to prosecute. And so there was a record now that this particular individual served time in jail for stalking. So that was very good. But the interesting thing was that, you know, every encounter allows some exposure to take place. And so with these encounters that were coming, I would learn, like, you know, who are the background attorneys and how can this person who has been convicted of stalking me, and it's not for love. I mean, you know, I wish, you know, it was, you know, somebody said, ooh, I got to have Cynthia, right? No, it's not that. And in fact, what happened was not only was I attacked in my home, but I also, the person had the, how can I say, the map to get to Jimmy Carter's house from my house. And this was during the time of the art students. Remember, there was the Israeli art students? The Israeli art students were going around to installations like Georgia. We have St. Mary's, which is the nuclear submarine base. And so they were going, these individuals who were art students, they were going around and they were taking photographs.
The name Mossad comes up when I think of that. Is there...
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so they were going around and they were taking photographs. So like that, one day I look out the window to my house and there's somebody standing in the street taking a photograph of me looking out my window. I mean, they probably didn't know that I would be looking out the window at that time. But it was just that I was under this constant veil of surveillance.
Why?
And, because I didn't go along with the AIPAC plan. I didn't go along. And so this was, I think, their way of putting me in my place and sort of keeping me quiet. And so it happened
these stalkers were connected to your criticism of Israel?
Well, I suspect that they were. There would have been no other reason. And I have no idea. Well, let's put it this way. It wasn't because of love, but somehow it happened. And
so I just want to get this straight because recently Congressperson Omar criticized Israel, complained about AIPAC. Did she say anything that wasn't true?
No,
I mean, she was brutally attacked by Democrats as well as Republicans. And I mean, I saw what she said, and she might have got a couple words less than perfect, but they weren't anti-Semitic, and they sure seemed true to me.
Well, she just talked about the power of the Israeli lobby. And I guess maybe you're not supposed to talk about that. Well, that was my first transgression. I guess maybe my first transgression was challenging the results of the 2000 election, because that was whole part and parcel of, the direction in which the country was supposed to go. And so we did that. Then 2001, participating in the World Conference Against Racism, that was verboten. And then after that, September 11th, and then questioning, okay, well, now we know what we saw, but what exactly happened? And we need to have an investigation of that. Well, you would have thought that I don't know what, because even though after any kind of accident that takes place within the transportation grid, you're supposed to call out the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, which is empowered and authorized to conduct investigations and to get at those root causes that I'm talking about in terms of whatever the failure was. And that didn't happen. Instead, what we had was George W. Bush calling, at that time, it was Daschle, who was the leader of the Senate. And so you had George W. Bush calling Daschle saying, no, don't do an investigation of September 11th. And moreover, you had Dick Cheney, who is the vice president, also saying, don't do an investigation. So now, I mean, what is this? We're given these talking points and we're told to say that we're hit because we're free. Well, of course, first of all, we're not free. Then secondly, if we're hit because we're free and everyone is saying, we're hit because we're free and we're not going to allow this to happen again, which is what we were told to say, then how can you prevent it from happening again if you don't know what happened?
Absolutely.
If there's been no investigation into what happened. So I just thought that this was like normal, natural, that this was responsible. I'm a member of Congress. I have responsibility for oversight. And this is clearly a failure of the executive branch. And well, anyway, as it turns out, I ended up fleeing the truth, because the truth was unpalatable for, I guess, for the people of the U.S. to actually know.
Have we learned anything more since the sham hearings that they held? Has much more come out in recent years? You're paying attention to it.
Well, I'm not paying that much attention to it, especially now, because I have other responsibilities that keep me super busy. But we do have more information. And the reason we have more information is because more people are willing to talk about it. So for example, I was excoriated. Even Dennis Bernstein had me on his show. And I went on the show, and basically what I said is that we know that there were warnings that were coming in from other countries and going into the administration, but what happened to them, we don't know. Well, as it turns out, you see, I had a methodology that I had adopted because, my background is international relations. And so George Bush said he clicks around on the internet. Well, I click around too, right? But I was clicking around. I could go around the world every morning after September 11th happened, and I could find, say, the Australian newspaper, The Age, or the Melbourne Age, or I could go to Haaretz, I could go to the Scottish, whatever. And so there were a lot of newspapers that I went to, and they were reporting information that was not being reported in the US. This was the whole thing. And so I had more information than the average citizen, but the information that I had was not supposed to be had by anybody, clearly, because it wasn't being reported. And what I said, the two things I said is that we need to have an investigation, and where's the NTSB? That I wrote in an op-ed. And the other thing I said was that the people of the US have spent trillions of dollars in a military intelligence infrastructure, and it fell 4 times in one day. We need to know what happened. That's all. That's all. But now you see, back then it was revolutionary, it was unpatriotic, it was everything except responsible. So even my governor, my former governor, my sitting senator, all of them, I'm Black, I'm woman, I'm Southern, they can easily discredit me by saying, you know, she's loony. And that's what they said, was I was loony. Max Cleland said, she doesn't know, I know for a fact she doesn't know what she's talking about. Well, the fact of the matter is I had far more information because I was clicking around the world than those people who were either following the standard government line or who were not doing their due diligence. And so I spoke to what my understanding of what a responsible legislative branch charged with oversight of the executive branch is supposed to do. And of course that just put me, put me on the other side of.
So we need to take do a show ID now. And I already introduced the show for the video. So we're just going to pause for 10 seconds, quiet, so I can find the spot and edit in the bumper.
Okay.
And my guest for this show is Cynthia Mckinney, former Congresswoman representing the state of Georgia, 2008 presidential candidate for the Green Party, and an assistant professor in the School of Social Sciences and the School of Business and Economics at North-South University in Bangladesh. So I would like you to give some advice to the new members of Congress, these strong, progressive women, AOC and Omar and Tlaib. What advice do you have to give to them?
Well, I would like to say to them one thing, but it's really not true.
It's not what? You broke up a second. No, you're breaking up. Back. Go ahead. No, you're broken up.
Okay.
What advice do you have to give to these new, really kick butt progressive women, female members of Congress, AOC, Omar, Tlaib? How would you advise them to deal with these kinds of challenges?
Well, I would want them, first of all, to learn from the experiences of their predecessors. But really what I want them to do is know what they're voting for. I just want them to read the legislation. Really, it becomes a revolutionary act just to read the legislation and then vote accordingly, which is what I began to do. And then Nita Lowey came up to me and said, every vote has its consequence. So I understand, so if you're there and you have a revolutionary purpose, then be a revolutionary.
And how would you suggest that they do that in a way so they can survive in Congress?
Well, they already, there's like 5 of them. You don't really need that many. They have to stick together. They have to have unity, and they need a few more. So have one more election cycle where they are recruiting candidates and financing those candidates. Now, of course, the ultimate question is, how serious is this? I don't know how serious it is, because I need to know who the gentlemen are who are in the room that finance those candidacies. And once I understand that, then I can understand just exactly how serious this is. Is this a Bob Torricelli moment? Or is this really, transformation for?
I think they were funded by Justice Democrats and small donations. They weren't taking any big money.
Yeah, that's what they always say. But you see, you have to understand the campaign finance rules. McCain-Feingold left loopholes as big as a Mack truck can drive through.
How's that?
Well, basically, yeah. So basically, you can have a list of donors who can make donations, and but actually the donations are made by, well, let's just put it this way. You can have unlimited money raising, and you can have unlimited money spending. These are by specialized vehicles that have been established by the United States Supreme Court, have authorized the proliferation of these kinds of organizations. So you don't have to take corporate money. You don't have to take PAC money. There are other ways you can do it. And those are basically, you have no idea who's sitting in those rooms at the table writing the checks. And then it doesn't show up on the campaign finance disclosure, because there are mechanisms that can be put in place where you have a list of names and those names show up on the disclosure, but those other names that are in that room that are writing the big checks never show up on the disclosure.
You think that's happening with Omar and Ocasio-Cortez and Tlaib and that group?
Of course it is.
Really?
Of course it is. So the question is, who's writing the checks?
Well, that's
and
always
so
the mystery,
once
right?
so once we understand who's writing the checks, we'll know if this is a Bob Torricelli moment or if this is true transformation. The institutions in Washington, D.C. need true transformation. I believe that's why a lot of people voted for Donald Trump, because he said, drain the swamp. Well, he hasn't drained the swamp. He's brought in different swamp monsters. That's why Hillary Clinton didn't win, because there was no way that with the level of corruption that she represented, that people would support that. People, when we say we want to take our country back, we mean we want to take our country back from the swamp. And when Donald Trump said the system is rigged, well, he said exactly what everybody knows and understands: the system is rigged.
But you're kind of you're throwing shade on AOC, Omar, and Tlaib too.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying I need to know, in order for me to understand exactly what kind of moment this is for the United States, I need to know who's writing the checks.
Okay, but I asked you about advice for them, and that was your response.
My advice for them is to read the legislation.
Read
the legislation and then vote accordingly.
That's not leadership, though. That's
what?
Just reading the legislation. How can they?
No, that's revolutionary, because 99% of them don't read the legislation. When I was there, I brought in I was on the House Armed Services Committee. I brought the staff in and I said, okay, let's go through the bill. The Pentagon Authorization Bill, NDAA. Okay, so I said, let's go through the bill. They said, Congresswoman, are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, I want to do that. And so that was part of the problem, is I understood the nooks and crannies of the legislation and who was tucking what inside, who had a, what do you call those? Who put a tummy tuck inside the NDAA, and who did a tummy tuck inside the State Department Authorization Bill. All right, but the only way you can find out these things, and these, how can I say, if you're there for 12 years, those procedures outlast you. And so they don't stop. But now maybe with more than just one member of House Armed Services or House Foreign Affairs Committee doing that, then maybe we can get into the nooks and crannies and we can expose. There used to be the award, the Golden Fleece Award, that was given every year. I can't remember the organization that would give the Golden Fleece Award.
It was a senator who would give it for funding that he felt was inappropriate, usually research that was obscure.
Yeah, okay. So now imagine if we've got 5 or 10. One of the lessons I learned is that you don't need to set an arbitrary number. So, for example, Bob Filner, I just don't understand what happened there. But anyway, he is a revolutionary guy, a wonderful wife, And so we would sit around and we would plot.
He's Ohio. Was he Ohio? Is that
no, he's San Diego.
Oh, San Diego. Okay.
San Diego, and then got into a whole lot of trouble with the, Me Too before it was called Me Too.
Oh yeah.
And so, he became the mayor of San Diego. I don't understand. I don't understand that. But anyway, Filner and I would sit around and we would plot. And we would plot, okay, what are we going to do to shake up this place? And so we said, okay, we had planned an action. And the action was going to be a protest inside. So it would have been, wonderful members of Congress protesting Congress.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Well, do you think that the new crew should do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have you been in touch with them at all?
No, not at all. No, not at all.
I would think that would be a great
people
connection.
are afraid. Look, it would be, but people are afraid of me. And as I said, you have to know who's writing the check to understand whether this is a real moment or not. If it's a real moment, then we can. They will find their way, and they will find their way to me. They will listen to you and me talking right now. So they will find their way if this is a real moment. And if it's not a real
let's
moment,
assume that it is. I love AOC and Omar. I haven't gotten to know Tlaib as much, but I mean, this new crew is incredible. I wish that the age for running for president was 29, but but I think they're pretty incredible people, and if we can make an assumption that they are good guys, then what did you learn that you would pass on to them besides reading the bills? Go a little deeper.
I think that's huge. Because there's only one responsibility for a member of Congress, and that's to cast their vote and use their bully pulpit, right? And so what is it that you're voting on? If you don't know what you're voting on, then you're just a part. You look up on the board.
Well, isn't it also a part to do investigations, to initiate legislation, to back and support and give legs to legislation?
Yes, all of that. Yes, that's right. But you've got to also know what legislation to stop. What legislation deserves to be pushed. What legislation has a tummy tuck inside that needs to be taken out. Which legislation is a red pill? Which legislation is a poison pill? They've got to understand that. And then how do you marshal that legislation? With parliamentary procedure. So you've got to know how to handle yourself on the floor. So it's not just about, it's the whole leadership span around championing your cause. And so if you don't know about parliamentary procedure and you can't manage a bill, yes, there's the parliamentarian does a lot of things, but you've got to be quick, you've got to be fast, you've got to be willing to stop legislation. There are some who are absolutely marvelous at that. And that's where I would want them to be, so that they are the quintessential practitioners of their trade.
Now, you said before that 5 or 10 people could make a real difference, and I kind of believe that. I think that our world manifests more through a nonlinear chaos theory of existence than a linear one, and in that world, emergence can appear and changes can happen very powerfully and quickly. So if there are 5 of them now, if they can get to 10, if they dealing with this DCCC blackball that's going on, which you can talk about that too. So let's say we get to 10 in 2020. How would things be different in the House?
Oh, that would be marvelous. That would absolutely be marvelous if we could get to 10. The story that I didn't finish telling is about how um, uh, Bob Filner
Oh yeah.
actually, uh, we set an arbitrary number. We said, okay, if we can get 10 members to join us, then we'll do the protest. And well, we didn't get 10. So we never did the protest. I think that we would have been at least just as effective in calling attention to the budgetary priorities of the Democrats and the Republicans had we not set the arbitrary number of 10. So it's, I think in the end, uh, they have a how can I say, they don't have critical mass, but they have enough to cause a ruckus. And so now if they can do, say, the next 2 or 3, that would be absolutely great. So then you start dealing with strategy. So you strategize, given the stage of campaign finance that we are in now, how do you take your message to the people through the derision, through the smears, through the ridicule, because that also is a part of the characterization of them as individuals. So that's what they did to me quite successfully. I mean,
Did you want to say caricaturization or characterization?
Yes. No. Caricaturization.
Okay.
So they make caricatures of you. So, it doesn't matter the amount of education I have, the amount of reading I have, the values that I formulate as a result of my understanding of what's going on around me in that institution. None of that matters now, because now you become that loony black girl.
Which is what they've been doing to AOC on Fox News brutally.
Yeah. Well, there's I don't think that's necessarily to her disadvantage. So,
why?
well, I come from Georgia, where our senator back in the civil rights days was Herman Talmadge, and he said, just spell my name right. So I don't think that is really hurting her, because as long as she has a message that gets through, that's what counts. And more people are hearing her message. So basically what I've done now is I'm taking my own advice. I've downloaded the Green New Deal so I can look at the legislation and I can see if that is legislation that I can promote. But what I really want is for people to just read the bill. So I posted it on my Twitter feed, here's the legislation. And surprisingly, a lot of people want to read these bills and they don't know how to find them. So that's one niche that I have created for myself, that I just now will post the links to the legislation so the average, ordinary, bottom-up person can read the legislation too.
What's your Twitter account?
Cynthia Mckinney.
Okay. Cynthia Mckinney. Great.
Right.
So we need to take another break. So we'll pause for 10 seconds.
Okay. And I'm supposed to be doing an interview right now. So let me send to him and tell him I'm a little late.
Okay.
Let me just tell him.
We've got about another 25 minutes. And my guest for this show is Cynthia Mckinney, former Congresswoman representing the state of Georgia, 2008 presidential candidate for the Green Party. And she's assistant professor in the School of Social Sciences and the School of Business and Economics at North-South University. So you're in Bangladesh, And when I think of Bangladesh now, I think of the Rohingya, the
Mm,
refugees. So
yes.
what can you tell us about that we're not going to get in the mainstream news?
Oh, well, there's a lot that you're not going to get in the mainstream news because the mainstream news is about promoting narratives and not necessarily about promoting realities. So
Yeah.
basically, what has happened is that you've got a captive population. Actually, I've been giving some thought to how I want to frame a paper that I'm about to write, where the North South University is about to host the Center for International Politics and Governance. And they're about to host a conference on the Rohingya. So I am thinking about how I want to tackle the whole issue of the Rohingya. Now, there are identity issues. So we don't exactly know. The Rohingya have a specialized identity, but who are they really? And so basically what I did when this sort of kicked off, maybe a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years ago, I decided, and my students were asking me questions about, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. So basically what I did was I took a series of trips over to Myanmar and I made some contacts on the ground. I made contacts with individuals who were associated with the current government, associated with formally with the government, so that I could sort of understand the mindset of what has happened. So now you've got some situations, and uh, one of the panels at this conference is going to deal with the issue of identity, because this is one of the key issues.
I don't explain that. What does identity have to do with the Rohingya?
Well, exactly who they are. And so you see, in 1971, well, you have to go back to the British. Not that the history here, this area has a history of civilization that goes back thousands of years, 4,000 years, in fact.
Wow.
And so, yeah, 4,000 years, and they had urban areas, they had coinage, they had glass beads that were the result of trade. So, China's trying to revive the new Silk Road. Well, there was the old Silk Road, and there was, and this is a major silk producing area here. So, you've got all of this history going on. And but then when the British came, with the colonialism, and there's a discussion now about reparations to, well, basically you've got Shashi Tharoor, who recently wrote a piece about Britain owing an apology and reparations because of colonialism, and oh my gosh, the things that happened during colonialism. So, and you've got extensions of those policies that exist today in the form of neocolonialism, which was a term coined by Kwame Nkrumah, who wrote the book, when found out that you can be free, but you're still not free. Because, and this is a whole get back to 911, they hit us because we're free. Well, we're not free, right? So, so we've got the neocolonialism, and we've got globalization, which is basically a one-way street, and we've got neoliberalism. And all of these are recent manifestations of the original colonial paradigm. Okay, so then what happened was the British decided, okay, we're going to divide this area based on religion. And we're going to have Muslims have their state, and we're going to have Hindus have their state. So the Hindu state was India, and the Muslim state was Pakistan. The only problem with the way the Brits did it was they left a whole lot of unfinished business. That's how you can get Pakistan and India coming to literal blows over Kashmir. And you have the situation where you've got, I think it's probably about 200 million Muslims that are in the Hindu area. So you've got, there's a lot going on there. Then you've got, I'm sorry, I told you I was sick. I was vomiting, so let me just try to slow down a minute. I'm sorry.
Okay, you were talking about colonialism and
Yes,
Muslims
right. So basically, what happened is that in 1948, you had this division: the Hindus and the Muslims getting their own state, basically. And so that's one thing that happened. But then in 1971, you had the Bangladeshis create their own state separate from the Pakistani state. Now, so you've got war breaking out. Now, what happens here, now this is where the story of the Rohingya begins. So now what you've got is these people who are fleeing Bangladesh because they're fleeing the war. And it's to the tune of millions who are fleeing to get into a safe area. What that meant was that many of them left the Bangladesh area and sought refuge in India. And many of them left the Bangladesh area and sought refuge in Myanmar.
Okay.
So now what you've got is this outflux of people, huge population. What the Indians did was the Indians created a list with the help of the United Nations of who these refugees were that were coming into India. Myanmar was controlled by the generals at that time. It was Burma. And so therefore, they were very suspicious of outside organizations, outsiders, period, like the United Nations. So you have this influx of people fleeing Bangladesh, the turmoil in Bangladesh, the war in Bangladesh, and they land in Myanmar, but without any registration from the UN, without any registration from the authorities in Myanmar. And they begin to live their lives. Now, compounded with that, you have the issue of Bangladesh adopting as a development policy for political expediency as well. You've got a situation where Bangladesh encourages its population to leave. And so now, then we get to the Rohingya. Who are the Rohingya? Are the Rohingya the people who left in 1971? Because, for example, you have people who live this is the confluence of the world's oldest religions, I guess. So you've got the Buddhists, you've got the Hindus, you've got the Muslims, you've got the Christians, you've got, and they're all living together. And so when I went to Myanmar—
Where were living in Bangladesh?
Yes, in that area, the entire South Asia region. And so you have, like when I went to Myanmar, they said, well, we've been living with the Muslims for thousands of years, so we don't have a problem with the Muslims. We do have a problem with these. Then when I took a student to go down to the camps and to begin to receive documentation about who these people were, they speak the same language as the Bangladeshis who live right across the border. So the issue of identity becomes very important. Who are the Rohingya? And that's one of the questions that will be asked, and hopefully the approximation of an answer will be provided at this conference.
What's your take?
Well, my take is that instead of trying to figure out who they are, I would look at what the U.S. pivot to Asia means for this population of people now. So we've got a situation where 700,000 people have been ethnically cleansed from the area in which they lived. And the likelihood of them going back there is very, very small. Now, it's for several reasons, but let's understand the nature of Myanmar. Myanmar is a nation state project. Myanmar, and the reason I say this, now I'm going to get, I didn't want to get technical, but you see, identity is a matter of your mentality. One's identity resides in one's mind. So we have the situation with Rachel Dolezal, who is taking a plea deal because she claimed to be of the African American identity. That's, and I'm willing to accept, like, as indigenous people, for indigenous people, the highest, how can I say, the highest acknowledgement of someone else is that they receive the embrace as a family member of the indigenous, right? And I've been through that experience with the First Nations up in Canada, where they wrapped their arms around me, gave me the blanket, and do that kind of a ceremony. So that's a high honor. And so I wouldn't say that Rachel Dolezal is crazy or whatever, because we have many different identities. You have an identity, I have an identity, and our identity as you're the interviewer and I'm the interviewee. But when we hang up this connection, then that identity ceases, and then another, we step into another identity. So identity is fluid. And
but there are identity issues with the Rohingya. I'm trying to clear a picture of what they are exactly. So the question, are they the people that left Bangladesh in the 70s and now
that's
they're
the question.
Thrown out of Myanmar?
That's the question that needs to be asked and answered. And I don't know if we are able to even get to that issue. Like I said, there's a panel that's going to discuss identity issues. So I have I have a former student who went into the Rohingya camps with a friend of mine who came over, a photojournalist, came over for the express purpose of documenting their stories. And my former student could speak Bangla, which is a language that is spoken in Bangladesh, could speak Bangla with the Rohingya. So these are Bangla speaking people. What does that mean in terms of their identity? So now, but now, they have a specific identity that has been created as a result of all of this. They are Rohingya. Rohingya is a new identity. Okay, but anyway, so my specific, so I said that Myanmar is a project, a nation state project. Myanmar consists of 135 different tribes and 135 different languages. So when the British went, they picked out the Burmese and and that's why the area is called Burma. But the people in that country want to create the idea of nation as Myanmarese, a Myanmar person, despite being Rakhine, despite being Shan, despite being all of those 135, you are that plus. Myanmar. That's the project that they're working on. That
Well,
the
why are
United
they
States,
throwing out the Rohingya then?
well, it's very complicated. So basically what happened is that you had these people who maybe in one series or maybe in a series of different migrations ended up outside of Bangladesh and in Myanmar without documentation, kind of like a situation that we have in the United States where we have people who are undocumented inside the US. And so now, how do you regularize them? And this is the issue. So, but you have to understand that Myanmar is a very big country in geography, very small country in population. So technically, they could use some people, right? They could use some people, but it's up to them to choose, to choose whom it is that they allow into their country in much the same way that we regularize that. Okay, so now, then what happens? There was a specific spark. The specific spark was you've got this organization that's very similar to ISIS, Daesh. I mean, you know, now you cannot separate the fact that the United States wants a military base in this part of the world. This is part of the China containment strategy. And also remember when Obama said pivot to Asia, what are they talking about? Now they're talking about the Indo-Pacific as if that's a reality, but they're going to create it and create that reality because the US wants a military base. They asked the government of Bangladesh to provide an island in the Bay of Bengal for the US military. The United States and the government of Bangladesh said no. Then the United States insisted that Bangladesh has a ISIS problem. You had John Kerry come here and say, you have an ISIS problem. The Prime Minister of Bangladesh said, no, we have people who are telling us, who are trying to put ISIS in our country, but we don't have an ISIS problem. I mean, you know, so you've got a lot of stuff going
so
on.
Bangladesh, if could have been the next Syria. I mean, the way the U.S. has funded different groups to go into Syria and basically destroy it. I know you've been to Syria, but it sounds like what you're saying is they could have done the same thing to Bangladesh.
I'm not saying that they could have done. So the rest of the story is that you have this organization, and the Rohingya people are very peaceful people. They said, no, we're not going to have any violence. We're not going to do any violence. But then after the so-called pivot to Asia, you have this organization called ARSA, the Rakhine Salvation Army or something like that. And so ARSA attacked in exactly the same way that you had in Libya and in Syria. You had the bottom-up people who were protesting, doing something, you know, protesting their conditions, attack the police stations. So they had simultaneous attack of police stations. This is what occasioned the ethnic cleansing that we saw and the push out of Myanmar. So it was that this organization sprung up, created by whom we don't know, financed by whom we don't know. But now, what does it allow? It allows
It makes me think of the way that CIA creates fake ops.
That's right. And it allows, Myanmar is an extremely wealthy country. So when I went over there, I went into one gentleman's home, and in one of his bedroom, not a bedroom because it's not a bedroom anymore, but it could have been a bedroom. There was a piece of raw jade that took up the entire, jade is like precious.
Yeah.
And so they've got precious stones.
How big was it? You didn't finish.
It was as big as the room.
Oh my gosh. It's
as big as the room. And so, and they've got gold. They've got.
Well, we all need things like that, right? Now, what's life without a piece of jade that's 8 by 8 by 8 or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and this is a very humble home. You know, it's not like a mansion or anything, but these people, there's money, there's wealth in Myanmar. George Soros said that it was one of his best investments. So, and they're in the process now, bringing in the IMF and, just doing everything. So it'll be very interesting what happens in the next elections in Myanmar. But so you've got the pivot to Asia. And not only is it that
so wait, are you saying that this pivot to Asia has played a role in the expelling of the Rohingya from Myanmar?
Well, that gets into my paper. And so basically what I'm going to look at is the creation of Kosovo. And so what exactly, now you've got a population of 700,000 people. You've got the United States that wants a military base in the region. What opportunities does the US make of the tragedy? So you're basically weaponizing pain, you're weaponizing migration, you're weaponizing poverty, but where have we seen that before?
You mentioned, I don't know about Kosovo, so explain the comparison.
Well, basically, the Kosovo Liberation Army was the equivalent, well, I guess you could say it was the ARSA equivalent, when the United States needed to break down Yugoslavia and balkanize, literally, balkanize Yugoslavia, and then balkanize Serbia as the main inheritor of sort of that mantle of leadership in that region of the world. Basically, it was the KLA that was running the drugs, that was the partner of the CIA, and so then their reward was to be granted state, how can I say, recognition. And so you've got the state of Kosovo is recognized only by the US and a handful of countries, but they're able to wield state power and to be a thorn in the side of Serbia. And so in terms of Serbia is friendly with Russia, and so now you've got this outpost that's friendly to the US.
You're not kidding. It is complicated. So basically, you're saying that the refugees, the Rohingya refugees, could become the next Kosovo?
That's what I want to study. That's what I want to research.
We've got to wrap in like a minute or two. So what do you want to finish up saying?
Well, basically, thank you, Rob, for inviting me. Thank you for your persistence. I'm glad I didn't get sick. And so let's just do this again, maybe after I've done my research, and then I can give you a more definitive response to the questions about what's going on with the Rohingya, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and India.
Okay. Great. My guest for this show, you've been listening to Cynthia Mckinney, former Congresswoman from the state of Georgia, 2008 presidential Green Party candidate, and assistant professor in the School of Social Sciences and the School of Business and Economics for North-South University. Thanks so much for being on the show.